Hi everyone, it's Sunday, February 21st, time for another HideNet Week in Review. I'm Vera Dordick. It was a bit of an odd week around the world in a number of respects. Prices were higher in a few places, but not in the U.S., where levels were mainly steady. For the U.S., the weather was the biggest newsmaker because unbelievably cold weather, snow, and ice devastated parts of the Midwest and the South, and especially Texas. That state saw temperatures plunge to dangerous levels, something that they're definitely not prepared for down there. And this has left millions without clean water, and a significant part of the population was without power much of the week. The entire state has been declared a disaster area, and some effects are expected to last for quite some time. Of course, this has affected some meat plants and some automotive production plants, including those that are in northern Mexico, because that area was also affected by power outages. Fortunately, temperatures are back to their normal warm levels this week, as everyone struggles to get back to usual. From the Hide perspective, in the U.S., volumes were low because most of Asia was still on holiday, and prices were largely unchanged. With regard to heavy Texas steers, prices were generally steady, with seasonal weights selling at $28, which is steady but $1 off the high of last week. No sellers were looking to change the market during the week because of the low volumes. Turning to the U.S. cow market, interest was subdued there as well, but prices were steady. And as we said last week, that's typically what happens during the Chinese holiday period. Looking at slaughter for the week through Saturday, February 20th, the total was just 552,000, which is 9% lower than last week. And the dramatic reduction in slaughter this week was because of the weather-related issues we already mentioned. Numerous plants were closed or experiencing late starts. The export report for the week showed sales were actually higher for the week ending February 11th at 549,700, up by 14%. Now, we should note that it was actually wet blue sales that pushed that number higher. With regard to shipping, things are still difficult, and combined shipments were down by 20% for that week ending the 11th. Now, sellers were hoping to take advantage of the quieter week to try and manage their shipping issues, but there were added difficulties for producers this week because, as we noted, the weather was a problem, and rail shipping was stymied for a few days due to ice and the disruptions in the south. So that meant that containers and chassis were either stuck on the rail or not able to get back to the rail system. So, looking at Europe, editor Andrea Guolo says that prices became a problem this week. This is all because German bulls saw levels go higher, and the rest of the market is trying to use that as a mechanism to push prices higher across the board. In the UK, Andrea says that the asking prices for these hides in Italy are rising. That said, sellers are asking £1 20 cents sterling for the 36 plus ox, and that's per kilo, but they're getting £1 15 cents, sometimes down to £1 10 cents. Regardless, sources tell Andrea that things are getting complicated, and that's partly because of Brexit. And then also last week, they also had some weather issues that contributed to shipping concerns. Irish prices for the same selection are at the same level, but in euros. And as we already said, the price of German bulls rose, and southern German bulls are selling at €1.60 per kilo. Now, that's the asking price, and they were getting it. So already this weekend, sellers are pushing up and asking for more. European cow market, that too saw some increases, all driven by those German bull prices. Sources say that whichever selections didn't increase this past week will likely go up this coming week. With regard to veal skins, sellers are trying to join the wave of price increases, but we'll have to see if that works for them, especially because leather goods demand doesn't seem ripe enough yet. In his analysis this week, Andrea considers all the elements that are in play, making prices a problem, especially where veal skins are concerned, and he also looks at where this puts tanneries with regard to sales, margins, and what the expectations are. Next, we turn to South America, and by now we shouldn't be surprised to hear that raw material prices are higher again in Brazil. Editor Ronald Guiel says that fresh hides there went up by 10 cents in reals, closing at 2 reals and 15 cents per kilo. TR1 was still steady this week, selling for $1.07 per square foot. In other news from Brazil, it was a relatively quiet week, but footwear brands have seen some good results from their participation in some smaller in-person fairs in the southern U.S., and Minerva has signed an MOU with a Saudi investor on possibly acquiring some cattle processing assets in Australia. From elsewhere in Latin America, in Argentina, a New Balance importer aims to increase local production of that footwear. Colombians spent more on clothing and footwear in December, and Mexico's fashion industry is promoting better regulation of official Mexican labeling standards because otherwise they say it would hurt the footwear industry. Also in Mexico, manufacturing employment was up in December, but again, not for leather. So that's all we have for this week, and until next week, good night from HideNet.